Yeah, one got me in the leg actually as a kid. So we had nothing other than our passport, a way to generate value. Yes! Then it is part of your success journey. Oh, that is the most painful thing that you can say to me. And they're terrified, so panicking. Business is easy actually. Having the challenges of life makes you appreciate the good times.
There, now how to be good at sales.
A simple role of a leader.
Michael,
Hi.
thank you so much for coming to the Pitch&Chips podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Pleasure.
First of all, help yourself whenever you want.
I've been looking at them for ages, and I must admit, it's a certain satisfaction getting that first chip to dip into a perfectly formed pot of mayonnaise. So there we go.
It was definitely worth the wait. You know, you had an incredible career. So you saved Redbus from financial peril. You merged it with Telecity. You led Telecity to a successful IPO. You built the biggest and the most successful data center in Europe, reaching a valuation of 2.6 billion. You wrote books, you raised money for charity, you have an investment vehicle, Tobin Ventures, which helps startups, which drives innovation. But before we get into the intricate details of your career, I want to ask you about your childhood and how that has shaped you into who you are today.
Yeah, I guess it probably has, as most people's childhood does. Grew up in the East End, very, very tough life. My father was quite a violent individual. He was one of several brothers that built a kind of a gang around the docks in Southeast London. Mm-hmm. They were the Craze franchise for Southeast London, so the Craze never used to come south of the river, but they had their influence that way. It's very violent to my mother as well. And when I was about 7, he was in and out of prison all the time. And when I was about 7, he happened to be in prison for one particular period. And my mother took me and ran off to Africa. Mm-hmm. I think it was going to be Canada, but for whatever reason, there was a subsidiary of the company she was working with in what was then called Rhodesia, now obviously Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. And we went there and obviously didn't realize we were going from frying pan to fire, and it was the beginning of a civil war. So we were petrol bombed a couple of times, and shot at several times.
Like as in you were...
Yeah, one got me in the leg actually as a kid. But yeah, quite a scary time. And then when I was 12, we managed to get back to the UK, but they took everything from us at the airport in Africa. So they took all our external clothes, our luggage, our money, jewellery, everything was gone. And basically we landed back in London as refugees coming back into the country. So we had nothing other than our passport. And so we lived in a squat in Stockwell for a couple of years. And there was a row of condemned houses, terraced houses, and we used to go into the houses, and people were moving into some more modern flats and things, waiting for this to be demolished. And they would leave pianos. Very often, you know, back in the old days, the families would have a piano and they'd have a sing-song on a Sunday and stuff, but they wouldn't move it because it was too heavy and they couldn't get it into an apartment. So we'd take the pianos out, tune them up, and roll them down the Old Kent Road and sell them for £20 each at East Street Market. And that's how I survived for a couple of years.
That was your first experience with entrepreneurship? And
yeah, exactly. And then got an apprenticeship at 16, left school at 16, got an apprenticeship in electronic engineering, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm a fan of Walter Isaacson and his biographies on the greats, like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and of course it's not a must, as with anything, but that does seem to be a common theme between entrepreneurial success and childhood adversity.
Yeah, so I think, you know, if you grow up thinking, you know, I try and balance with my kids. I obviously they've all gone through university. They you know, I want them to do extremely well, but I want them to be able to have a work ethic as well, right? And at the end of the day, you know, relying on other people to do things for you is not an existence, right? You need people to have a sense of being able to own their existence. And the first thing about that is being able to feed yourself, clothe yourself, and you've got to work, you've got to earn money. So having a way to generate value in whatever form that is a life skill. Yeah.
And how do you build that work ethic? How do you? Of course, it's not just the one you wake up and then
well,
you're disciplined.
I think it's important that you kind of you look at yourself and say, okay, am I going to rely on at certain times in your life? Obviously, especially when you're younger, you need to have support, and it's a good thing that people get support, and that's through education, through sort of various forms of discipline. But as soon as you can, you've got to have a mentality of saying, how do I become independent? Right? Independence is key. Whatever, if you have independence, you can choose to not be independent. But if you don't have the choice, I think one of the luxuries of life is choice, right? So having the choice of things, even if you still have the same outcome, but the ability to, you may not go on holiday, but if you know you could go on holiday, it's as good as going on holiday, right? So that makes sense.
Did you have any influential figures or mentors who perhaps helped you survive that adversity? Because you always need people there for you, even at the hard times. So
yeah, it's I must admit I haven't. Looking back, I haven't really had someone that I would say stands out. But during the period of time, so for example, there was a guy in Africa that befriended my mother at the time and kind of acted as a little bit of a stepdad for me for a few years. And he got me to play soccer. He brought me to this team, and I was very introverted at the time. And the first team he brought me to was a really good team, and I could never play, right? Because they were superstars. And he took me to another team, which was quite an average team, and I started playing. And then I played for Rhodesia Juniors at the time, and that confidence of being able to shine was important. But he recognized that despite the fact that I was a sub in a really good team, that wasn't going to do it. That wasn't going to give me the kind of the confidence that I was searching by doing this, or that he was generating for me. So by taking me to a mediocre team that I could always get a game, was more valuable to me than playing for the Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah. Nottingham Forest, I could always get a game. So.
But it's super interesting how little moments like this in life, you never know how much they change. The rest of your journey, because the confidence that perhaps was built through. Oh,
absolutely. And look, I mean, there's a million things in your life that you can look back and you may never even mention them, right? But they are the things that inside you were kind of pivotal on certain attributes, certain attitudes. Some things you do as a kid and you feel guilty about forevermore. And they're stupid, right? They'll be like, steal a little car from your friend or something, right? And that stays in your mind forever and makes you appreciate the feeling of how bad it was to do that, when you were 3 or something, when you were 5. And those are the things that mold you for later and give you a kind of moral compass. And I think we all have those. And it's sometimes you mention them to people, sometimes you never mention them to anyone, but they're all there.
Yeah. And that confidence that the football team built, that sort of led to your first success with cold calling.
Well, I mean, actually, the guy that taught me to sell when I was about in my early 20s was Brian Adams' cousin, believe it or not, and which is another story. But the interesting thing about selling was he would say, first of all, you've got to embrace failure as much as you embrace success, right? In order to be comfortable in a sales cycle. And he said, imagine if you're a broom salesman, right? And you've got a family business that's always sold brooms. And you come across a row of terraced houses, 100 houses, and because it's a family business, it's a 100-year-old business, that on average, you've got to knock on 100 doors, and out of those 100 doors, 98 of them will already have a broom. One of them won't have a broom but can't afford yours, and one of them will buy. And so, on average, that's it. For the last 100 years, that's what, So it doesn't matter where you start on that row of houses, right? So you knock on the door, and the likelihood is the door opens. Hi, and it shuts again. Now, how do you react to that? You should go, yes, because I'm one step closer to my sale. Because you know by average, you're going to have 99 of those before you get the sale. So the quicker you have them,
but don't
the
you
quicker
feel
your success comes.
Don't you feel in today's world, once you reach the 100th house, they're like, oh, the competitor down the road actually already sold it for a cheaper price.
Well, those are other dynamics, right? I mean, you've got to have a good broom, right? So, and you've got to have the right price. But the concept of treating failure as learning is super important, right? So with the kids, I tell them, like, there's no failure isn't failure unless it's the last time you try, right? But if failure is simply learning how not to do something, then it is part of your success journey. It's a really important difference between, there's either success or there's learning, right? There's not getting it wrong per se. There's just understanding how not to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quickest way towards certain like inspiration and an understanding about something.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's anything in life is simply, unless you're very lucky, right, and you get it right first time, but then you go on a different journey, and then suddenly you don't get it right first time, and you're completely lost because you don't know how to feel about that, right? But the point is, getting things wrong is all, the first time a baby stands up and falls over, it works out that didn't work that was imbalanced, and the next time I'll do it better, and the next time you do it better, and then suddenly we're all walking around as adults and we've forgotten that learning piece, right? Because we've learned all the times we fell over. But I think everything in life should be a process, right? And failure is just part of the journey. And people get distraught about failure, but they I can't do it. I can't. That's the whole point, right? Anything that's worth doing, you should strive. It shouldn't come naturally. It shouldn't come easily. You should strive for it. It gives it more value in life. Mm-hmm. And actually, someone told me a way to think about failure as well. It's like, if you think of yourself as a hurdler, right? You've got 100 meters hurdles and you've got 10 things to get over, right? Of course, they could run faster if there were no hurdles there. But the hurdles are the things that are differentiating you between you and everyone else, right? And so every time you get over a challenge, you're saying that the people behind you have still got to get over that. So it's a process of kind of filtering. Mm-hmm. So the more hurdles you come across in life, the more likely it is, as long as you get over it, you're going to differentiate yourself from the competition.
Of course, and also I think when looking back at the track that you ran, you see these hurdles that you jumped over. You're like, wow, this was a good journey. This was
exactly, yeah. It's also it allows you to think about things in an accomplishment mode, right, rather than just the easy run.
So I'm gonna move the chips a bit closer. So.
And you tempted me.
Yeah. So after you completed your apprenticeship, what did you do? What were the next steps?
So I didn't really have a plan, right? So I didn't kind of think about things as, I'm going to finish my apprenticeship, then I'm going to do this, and it was like, I just want to make money. And so I applied. Apply for jobs that you have no idea how you're going to do, right? I always applied for jobs that were way, way above my own personal belief of capabilities. And I think this particular one was a technical director in London, and I was up in Milton Keynes at the time, finished my apprenticeship, and there was no way I could do this job. But then I thought, well, why on earth wouldn't I try for it? And sooner or later you get lucky, And I got the job, and it was a French computer manufacturer. Hadn't sold anything in the UK anyway, so I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs most of the time. So I just picked up Yellow Pages and started flicking through, started phoning a few people, and I didn't even. It was a PC manufacturer, a bit like in the old days there was Compaq, Nowadays it's HP and all these people, but Compaq was a big personal computer manufacturer, and this one was a company called Goupil, which is a French one. Very expensive, really good computers, but too expensive for the market. Anyway, so I started phoning up various people, and I bounced onto these people in Wales that were a distributor of the old BBC Commodore computers, and they just decided they wanted a new portable computer, and we just brought one out. And so they said, yeah, come down and see me. Went down and see them, and I got my first order of 100 laptops, and nobody had sold any laptops in the UK before. And so there was a real problem because this French company didn't have enough QWERTY keyboards, right? Because in France, obviously, it's AZERTY, right? And so they were going like, how on earth do I get these keyboards? And anyway, we delivered it. And then the poor CEO of the company had a heart attack. He survived, but had to retire. And the French guys said, well, look, I don't want to go through a headhunt. You seem to be good.
Proactive, which is crucial.
You can be CEO. So at the age of about 23, that was my first CEO role. And there was about 25, 30 people. I moved the business out to Twyford near Reading, recruited a few more people. We bought a little business. But I was making so many mistakes. Again, at that time, I believed management was shouting at people and telling them what to do and all this sort of stuff. And
I read that you threw cups.
Oh yeah, throw cups, smash, bash walls and all that sort of stuff. And it was, you could looking back again, right? And when I do that, and you could see in people's eyes, bloody idiot, go on, all this sort of stuff. But at the time, I didn't know any different. I didn't understand what leadership or management was. But over time, you kind of learn that people react infinitely better to empowerment and encouragement and all those good things. I think having kids as well makes a difference, right? Because you can see on a 24-hour basis, there's in the very early days, you can give them a whack on the bum if they do something wrong, and they learn that that's the outcome of doing something wrong. But if you want them to go an extra, put a little bit more effort into something, or finish their dinner, or do those things, you've got to give them incentives. You've got to, make them feel good about delivering, rather than just simply the whack on the bum if they're.
It's a constant feedback loop.
It is,
which is important in startups.
Exactly.
When you have a loop where you speak to customers, speak to.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, the simple role of a leader is to create more leaders. That's all you're looking to do in any business, in any situation, wherever you are in the hierarchy. Is the people that engage with you just need to be you, right? And a lot of people fear empowering people to the point where they feel they're going to lose their job. They're going to, someone's going to take their role. But if you want to shine in business, you've got to create fantastic people around you, and you've got to empower them, and you've got to give them freedom, and you've got to allow them not to feel fear, right? So if you're going to try and get, especially these days, technology, things are rarely done today the same as they were done 5 years ago, and will almost certainly won't be done the same way next year as well. So if you're asking people to constantly push an envelope in terms of being creative, try and find better ways to do things, innovation, then they're going to get things wrong, right? Because by definition, they won't have done it before, so you're going to get things wrong. And you've got to have people that are fearless of getting it wrong to find out how to do it better. So that's important. If they're always worried about, if they get it wrong, they're going to get fired, you're never going to grow. Right?
So when you were called into Redbus to save it from financial peril, was the important step, surrounding yourself with people that will help you turn things around, or was the key finding investors to, first of all, keep the business afloat, and then after? Well,
to be honest, with all honesty, I wasn't brought in to rescue it. And I didn't do my due diligence going in there. If I'd have realized how bad the condition was of the business, I probably wouldn't have joined. But I went there and thought, oh my God, I've probably got about 3 paydays here before it goes bankrupt. it was more of a kind of a desperation, and I then found people that were in the organization that I felt I could use as allies, right? So there were some people that were just, we're done, we're just going to wind this out and find another job. And there's a couple of people that actually really cared and were trying to get some action going. But you know, for example, the FD at the time was a really good guy, knew that we needed to cut costs, but no one had the courage to do all the right things. So I befriended him, if you like. So he's like, okay, get myself a couple of quick allies, and then took some really tough decisions. I mean, I remember one day I had to go in there and literally made 70% of the company redundant, right? And people were swearing at me, one spat at me, and you have to just focus on the fact that you're saving 30% of the jobs, right? And a lot of these people actually afterwards came to me 2-3 years later and said, you know, I started my own bike shop. And it was, what a great thing it was to actually finally come out of that, because nobody was enjoying their time there. They could all see this was a terminally ill business, right? And so nobody had fun, nobody, you know, so actually making the change. And I did it. It was about 3 weeks before Christmas when I actually made that announcement. And I struggled with myself in terms of what do I leave it till after Christmas? We had about 3 months money left, 3 months cash burn. And it was either do it before Christmas so that people would be able to kind of, and give them a month's notice, and people could maybe control their spending a little bit over Christmas, or, right, everyone spends like crazy and then come after Christmas, you've got all your debts and everything, and then get made redundant. It wasn't a pleasant thing to do 3 weeks before Christmas, but I felt that was the right way round. But yeah, then we kind of stripped it bare and then run around finding new investors. And again, so much luck, right? I mean, I don't buy this kind of, you know, success is all about planning and all that. There's just, it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of luck. And you've just got to, you know, the way to find more luck is to put yourself in positions that luck might present itself, right?
Maximize the percentage.
Exactly. You know, if you lay in bed, the likelihood of you having luck is. But if you talk to people, conversations are so important, right? Talking and talking and talking, and somehow conversations create circles. And I mean, even today, I'll have a conversation with someone, or someone will phone me up that I've spoken to 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And they'll go, remember? And I go, probably not. I don't remember, actually, but I was probably too drunk at the time. And they'll go, yeah, we spoke. Anyway, I've got this business, right? Can you help me on this? And almost all of my current contacts and deals and things like that have come out of conversations, sometimes a decade ago.
Little strings which are still attached.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and you never know which ones are going to do it, and you never know when they're going to do it. So the key is have lots of conversations, right? And these conversations start to create fortune. And the more opportunity and fortune you can create, the more things start to align. You know? There's Gotha talks about this story. I think it must have been in his 70s when he wrote it, but about these guys climbing Everest, and they got to this point where they were between two bases, you know, one camp and another camp, and it was shorter to go forward, but the weather was coming in, and it was getting very bad, and they didn't know there was a couple of crevasses, and they were worried about, but they could go back, but it was a further distance, so they were torn in their decision making. And he said the thing is, once you made a decision, it didn't really matter what the decision was, and they made the decision to go forward. And this crevasse, for example, the snow broke and it filled the hole, and they were able to cross. And he said all manner of fortune comes to help you once you've made a decision, once you've made the commitment that you're not dilly, you're not going back. This is what we're doing, and the luck that came to them, right? They couldn't have imagined what that luck was. But unless you make the decision to put one step in front of the other, then you won't even know the luck is going to happen, right? So most of life is about just committing to a direction, and then the luck comes. It really, you start to reckon. You call it luck. You start to reckon, but fortune is all around you. Opportunity is all around. It just so happens that you only see it when you have a conviction of direction. Then things happen to you and go, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, when you have direction, and when you help yourself. When you
absolutely.
Go to this, go to network, have conversations. When you, even with knowledge, when you just intake knowledge, read the random book, you never know if it's going to be helpful in the certain situation.
Exactly.
But going to sleep that night when you fired 70% of the.
It was horrible. No, really, it was so bad. I mean, it was. I cried when I did it, and I, there's nothing that prepares you for the. I mean, I've fired many people, and generally it's a one-to-one conversation about, this isn't a good thing for you, and it's not a good thing for me. And having a one-to-one with someone like that, actually, generally they start to think about it in a different way, and they say, yeah, you're probably right. Actually, I've not been happy doing this for a long time, because people know when they're not getting it right. People know when they're failing. And you can find different roles for people and maybe shift them around an organization. But ultimately, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But when you've got 30, 40, 50 people in front of you, or 100 people in front of you, and you're saying, blanket, I just don't have the time to engage with all of you.
One by one.
Yeah, and like, we're just wiping this out. That's a hard thing. It's just not pleasant,
So, you fired 70% of the staff, and you found investors.
It sounds like the beginning of a joke, but there was a Russian, an American, and a Dane. So they all come together, and even that was pure coincidence. It was pure luck. Managed to get these guys interested, convince them of the vision, and say, look, this business is going to do this. And effectively, we had these assets that were data centers that were the center of the internet. The trouble is that the internet wasn't a fully formed beast yet, right? So if you had people could see, oh yeah, I'm sure the internet, they'd listen to David Bowie saying the internet's going to change the world and everything else. But we used to have a big data center in Docklands that you could play five-a-side soccer on inside. It was just a big open space and raised floor, and it was. But over time, it was an idea ahead of its time. But over time, the internet got more prolific. People needed more servers. More things were happening on the internet, and these things, it cost a lot of money to build a data center, tens of millions of pounds. So once you had it, there was a differentiator because no one else wanted to build them, and so. The one thing this company had was it spent 300-400 million in building these data centers.
400 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then literally going, but the beauty about it is, you had a fixed cost base, but the downside was you still had a fixed cost base. So with no revenue, you still had this fixed. But as you finally got revenue, the fixed cost base meant that the flow-through margins were very big. But you just had to get to that point. So got a few investors that were able to see that vision when we took it private, delisted it, and there was another business, Telecity, very similar journey, that had been funded by 3i, and we managed to merge them together, and then we relisted it in 2007. So took it private. It was about 6 million market cap, I think, when we went in there. Took it private for about 20 million, relisted it for about 200 as a combined business, and then about 3 billion.
And that's in 2 years?
Yeah, well, a little bit longer. So 2002, took it private in 2003, relisted it in 2007, and then sold it in 2015.
Did you know that it's going to reach a valuation of 2.6 billion?
No. It was all fun. But again, having great people. So I had an amazing team, handpicked individuals in every country. There's one guy who works for me now in another business called Pulsant, where I'm chairman. But I brought him in. So I used to, I'd always recruit a person not for a role, but because of their character. And I've never looked at someone's CV and skill sets and things like that. I want the right attitude. And bearing in mind that I used to get jobs that I wasn't capable of doing, right? So a lot of people look at a CV and go, oh, I'm looking for experience of doing what I want this guy to do. Mm-hmm. Well, where's the growth in that, right? So expecting someone to just do that job again for a little bit more money means that he's going to go to someone else who's going to pay a little bit more money again, right? So, but I look for attitude, right? If someone, my pet hate in life is when you talk to someone and their answer is, the problem with that is, that is the most painful thing that you can say to me. Right? Don't tell me what the problem of what I've just suggested.
But Michael, the problem with what you're saying.
Tell me that you think I'm crazy, right? But tell me also what you think is a better solution, or and a lot of people are very good at telling you why things won't work, but they don't tell you why things or what could work, And so having an attitude that goes, okay, all right, I'll give that a go, or didn't think about that, okay, or that would be really good, but how about doing it this way? Mm-hmm. That's, in an interview for me, they've got the job. I don't care what the job is. And I recruited this guy, and I said, I don't know. I was recruiting for a head of media, actually, and he didn't get the job. But I said, I want you to come anyway. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, I just want you on board. And he went, so you want me to extra half an hour each way commute, no more money, no job title? I don't think so. And I said, well, I do think you'll enjoy it here, but I can't tell you doing what. Mm-hmm. And it was near Christmas, and I said, please come and meet the team. I'll come and have dinner with. And we were in Asia to Cuba, on St. Martin's Lane. It was a Christmas dinner. And I said, just come along and meet the team, and then I'll just introduce you as a friend of mine. He won't say why. And I introduced him that evening, and I never really spoke to him in the evening, but he engaged with everyone. And next day he phoned me up and said, right, I'm in. I want that atmosphere. I want that camaraderie, the feeling that you've created with your team.
And what is that feeling? Is that feeling of,
independence, empowerment, lack of fear of failure. Mm-hmm. They're on a mission that, they know where the vision of the business is, and they know how they can add to that journey. Mm-hmm. And so his first job, I said, right, go and sort out our networks or something like that. And 3 months in, I said to him, right, he was a project manager. That was his kind of background. Mm-hmm. Cable and wireless project manager. And I said, right, we're going to IPO the business. And he went, okay. And I said, I want you to project manage the IPO, start to finish. He goes, are you crazy? I'm not financial, I know nothing about the markets. I said, yeah, but it's a project. Just manage a project. That's what you do, right? So, and the guy, it was the smoothest IPO in a point where people were pulling IPOs left, right, and center. And then after that, I gave him the role of running the UK operation for me, my biggest subsidiary. And then after now he's a very, very accomplished CEO in the industry, right? Mm-hmm. But he came as a project manager, and empowerment and giving him the opportunity to grow.
To make mistakes, but it's his mistakes.
It's his mistakes, and it's his learning. Yeah, mm-hmm. And ultimately, he's a great guy now. And the moment I had this project with this business today, it wasn't really working with the CEO I had there, so I was able to pull him in and say, I think we can work again here, and he immediately said yes, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So
I want to draw back a bit and touch on the merger. Mm-hmm. There's a great book by the CEO of Disney, Robert Iger, The Journey of a Lifetime, and there's a lot of detail about merging two companies, whether it's like ABC and Disney, integrating Pixar, Marvel, and so on. So it's obviously very hard, especially when there are two competitors, merging two companies, merging the employees. So how was that?
Well, I think the two companies were very different. They were obviously doing exactly the same thing. So the consolidation made complete sense, but the culture in the companies was completely different. So Redbus was very maverick, right? So I kind of created this sort of hustle, what do you need to get this deal done type thing. Mm-hmm. And the other was very bureaucratic, right? So it was paperwork and, you must sign this this is the only way we're going to do a deal together. You must sign this contract, And so understanding how to get the best of both of those was, the objective was there were certain values in both of those that would be very valuable bringing together, right? Rather than just trying to smother the other culture with this one. But and bringing the two teams together, there was certain overlap, right? When I first told my team that we were going to do this deal, they were quite worried. They were going like, this consolidation means job losses. What? I said, look, you can't worry about this, right? So, again, one of my sort of big messages to people is like, there's no point in worrying about things. You either, if there's something that dangerous on the horizon or risky on the horizon, you can do whatever you can do to mitigate it, right? And if there's nothing you can do to mitigate it, then there's nothing you can do to mitigate it. Either way, don't sit and worry, right? So either act or accept there's no action.
And act on something else.
And so worrying about it is just like paying interest on a debt you haven't drawn down on, right? It's just like a nonsense emotion. So my team was worried about this. So I took them, we were having a management meeting I took them up to Edinburgh. And on the way up, when you drive across the Firth of Forth on the old road bridge, not the new one, literally as you go north, you double back on yourself into the Firth of Forth. And there's this huge aquarium, huge place. And we stopped there and they thought, well, it must be just a pit stop on the way up. And I said, okay, 2 by 2, get the wetsuits on and this sort of thing. And they were like very confused. And once they got their wetsuits on, I told them, right, in the water. And they then realized when they saw these shark fins in front of them that they were going to go diving with sharks with no cage and no net or anything else.
So just swimming. You took your management team to swim with sharks?
Yeah. And they were swearing at me and what on earth, where's my lawyer, all this sort of stuff. But they all did it. And so literally they were coming, these sharks were huge sharks and they were coming up to you, within a few 6 inches of your face, right? And so it was very terrifying. And afterwards, as they came out again, we had the kind of debrief and I said, well, how did you feel when you realized what you were about to do? When it dawned on you that you were getting in the water with these sharks? And they were terrified. I was panicking. And I said, well, how did it feel when you were literally on the seabed and on your knees and these things were coming? Well, I was still terrified, but it was like really exciting. It was, it was like, oh my God, How did you feel when you came out? Well, I don't want to do it again, but it was an amazing experience. Oh, I'm so glad I did it. I was so, it's something I can tell my kids. So I said, well, anything in life, right? Think about that evolution of emotion, right? So first of all, you're looking at something that hasn't yet happened. And in your mind, everything is going to go wrong. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong. I'm going to get eaten, all these things. And then when you're doing it, it's kind of exciting. You're going through something. You're actually experiencing, right, a challenge. And then when you've come out of it, you feel so much better. You're so happy you did it. And I said, every time you come across a challenge in life, remember that journey, right? So that you don't start off in this utter panic, addressing what you think is a hopeless thing. That was how I kind of got the message of don't fear change, don't fear things in the future.
What were some of the biggest challenges that Telecity faced, from IPO to the 2.6 billion valuation?
Well, I tell you one of the things, right? So when we eventually did merge them all, right? And the whole team was there and we just enlarged the team with some changes and things. And there was still this, most people got it. Most people said, okay, we've embraced this new and we're going, we've got the new culture, the new direction. There was a couple of them that still really felt a little bit kind of them and us. And so I took them up to the North Pole. And
to the
North Pole, yeah. So we went to, it's right in the northern part of, right inside the Arctic Circle in Sweden, there's an ice hotel. And they make it every year fresh. So they cut these blocks out of the fjords and make, the hotel is made of ice, the beds are made of ice, the tables are made of ice, even the plates are ice, everything is ice, right? The whole thing. And I got them sort of fairly well lubricated with vodka and things in the bar, which is quite important for the story. But so got them all sort of, you know, well doused, and then I explained the sleeping arrangements. And one of the things that you have to do up there is you have to sleep 2 per bed for body warmth, right? So the ones that didn't get on together, I made them sleep together, right?
Nice.
And
how did they react?
And they were the best of friends in the morning, because one of the reasons of getting them well lubricated was that they need to go to the toilet. And one thing you don't have in an ice hotel is an ice toilet, right? So you have to go outside. But if you go outside in the dark at minus 25, minus 30, and you slip, you're going to be dead, right? So you have to go out 2 by 2. So one of them, you know, if they need the loo, then you have to wake up this guy that you don't like and say, excuse me, can you follow me out with a torch so I can do my business? And then perhaps I can warm my feet up on...
Surely then the other guy would hate him even more.
Well, at least it brings you together, right? It makes you shows that both of you are just humans.
I guess a journey towards the toilet and just supporting each other.
Exactly.
Open eyes.
There's no, no secrets. So yeah, that was another lesson of how to just make people feel human. And say, you know, you might have a different opinion here, but actually they're just not bad people just because they have a different opinion. They're just different opinions. Right?
Yeah.
And so that helped a lot. But
and often it's complementary in business when you have a different opinion.
It has to be, right? I mean, you know, alignment of process. Once you've, I used to allow people to have all their opinions and all their different views of life, and you know, I'm not a smart guy, right? I left school at 16, so I don't have all the answers, and I don't profess to have all the answers. That's why I surround myself with as many smart people as I can find or pay for. And I take on all of their information. I take on all their ideas and suggestions. But there's a certain point comes where all of those ideas around a table need to be digested and collated and converted into an action, right? Into a direction. So that there's the point where lots of variables need to be distilled into thank you for all that, and we are now doing this, right? And you have to have people that then kind of align and buy in, even if they've said, "What? Okay, I hear it. I didn't like that, but hey, this is what we're doing now," and they have to buy into it. But yeah, coming back, yeah, I mean, like, you know, you say those challenges, I guess.
Or pivotal moments, perhaps, which shaped the growth.
Look, I mean, you know, all these things are. Yeah. Again, luck forms tremendous parts of these things, right? And getting those investors again was pure luck. I mean, I managed to find one of them. Simply, I opened some mail of our former chairman, and he was no longer there. And I opened it up, and it happened to be a golf club. Sort of names and addresses list, and I opened it up and I found these names and addresses, and I remember this former guy talking about a certain chap, and his home phone number and everything was in there. I phoned him up and I said, "Hey, look, this guy told me to give you a call. This is a really good investment." He flies over from America, invests a load of money, right? Now, had that not been sent to the office by mistake rather than to the chap's home, had I not opened it because it was just the mail, the company mail, had I not flicked through it and found this guy and remembered his name from a conversation. So all of these things are, you know, little bits of luck, right? But you've got to act on them all. But everything in life is about these little bits of luck. Yeah. So, you know, business is easy, actually, right? It's people that are the challenge, but yeah.
A business, you had a straightforward business model.
It was a very simple business model. I mean, it was you spend a lot of money to build these data centers, and then you wait for the internet to happen. And then things on the internet, the more things that happen on the internet, the more servers need to be put in these rooms. And they're big consumers of power. So you need cooling and things like that. But ultimately, we became the heart of the internet. And so we had these in Paris, Frankfurt, London. So Europe's internet evolved out of these buildings, essentially, right?
You basically built the data infrastructure.
Yeah, if you think about the internet being this sprawling kind of network of servers, right? Some of them are storage, some of them are transactional, but they all kind of coexist across the globe. But they all started with core bits. And if you think about like the Piccadilly Circus of the internet, right? Where all the roads connect. So if you're here and you want to and the Google engine is there and whatever you're searching for is here, everything kind of goes like this. Like that, right? All through the hub. And those hubs live in physical buildings. And we were lucky enough to have...
The whole of Europe and UK has you to thank.
Exactly, yeah.
Is it true
or to criticize one or the other. So.
Is it true that 90% of Britain's internet traffic passed through the center that you built?
It was actually more. I was thinking about it. I think it's about 96%, of all Britain's internet traffic flowed through one building in Docklands. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happens when you get to that level of market share?
Well, I mean, the thing is that, you've got these hubs that never, I mean, they still exist today and they can't be replicated, right? But other data centers constantly are being built now right across the globe. And what those data centers do is they, with AI, they'll store data. With driverless cars, they communicate with each other with a local data center. But the actual hubs of the internet still live in those buildings.
Yeah. Would that be considered a natural monopoly? Were there any problems with the regulation, or perhaps?
Well, I think the thing is that I think nobody really understood the world of data centers enough to appreciate that. That was a monopoly, if you like. But nowadays there are many data center companies, and they're all building lots of data centers. So in the eyes of regulators, they probably can't distinguish between data centers, and they think, oh, there's lots of data centers, lots of manufacturers, lots of operators. So they probably don't think of it as that. But yeah, those small data centers from the late 90s, they're the ones that still own the hub of the internet. Yeah.
So everyone tuning into the Pitch&Chips podcast, your internet traffic.
Exactly. You're
Michael to think about it.
Yeah, you're actually using. I mean, the interesting thing, right, is every time someone says, it makes me laugh when Greta Thunberg moans about saving the planet, and she's sending tweets out, and those tweets are consuming energy. Right?
Yeah. A lot of energy.
A lot of energy. So anything you do on the internet is consuming power. A lot of the industry now is all about how do you use hydrogen fuel cells, solar panels, that sort of thing. But we're not going to be using the internet less tomorrow than we did yesterday. So
perhaps more.
And so and AI is amazing. I mean, when Google puts Bard underneath Google search. Every search you do, regardless of whether you're using AI or not, the search is going to be richer in terms of its response, but it's going to use 17 times more power to do that search than the search before AI. More power. So every time you search on Google now with Bard underneath it, 17 times the power consumption of your search before.
And with a lot of companies using AI and a lot of
companies using it. Power is we don't appreciate that everything we do on the internet is consuming power, because we think it's going through the air and stuff. No, but it has to be driven.
But for the accomplishment of building the data center infrastructure in Europe, you received the OBE, so Order of the British Empire. How was that experience? And
very humbling. I mean, obviously, it was a lot of good people's work to build the industry, right? And and I just got the recognition for it. But it was very humbling on the basis that it was a lot of people behind that. And unfortunately, I couldn't share the medal out with people. But I've got a lot of people to thank to help me get there. But it was great. I mean, I actually used to see Prince Charles on a regular basis because of the charity work. So I was working with the Prince's Trust, and I was working with the British Asian Trust and a number of others. And these were all. He was the head of all these charities. So I probably saw him every 6 weeks or so, right? And I just had a meeting with him It was actually the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, which was his dad at the time. But as his dad was getting older, I used to step in to hand out some of these awards, and I went with Prince Charles on that once, and it was about a week before my investiture. And when you're in Buckingham Palace getting these awards, right, you're queuing up a bit like when your kids get their degrees, you know, and they all kind of line up there like that, and you walk on. Yeah, exactly. And so I was queuing up in this antechamber, and there's hundreds of people inside Buckingham Palace, and music's playing, and really nice. And then each time someone walks on, he gets announced, and then Prince Charles has a little conversation, pins the medal on, and off he goes, and the next one comes. And it came to my turn, and as I'm walking on, he looks at me, he goes, "Not you again," like that, and we both burst out laughing. And I said, "Well, you can talk. I was hoping for your mum, right?" So, but we started laughing, and everyone was going, "What's going on? What's going on?" But literally, there's a couple of pictures of us actually just doubled up laughing while he was giving me the medal. But yeah, it's good times.
But has that word influenced anything, like on anything in your life? Maybe it's easier to get reservations in the restaurant, or
yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I know. Like it's a lovely thing to have, but you know, it's you've still got to get up in the morning the next day and do it all again, and you still got hungry mouths to feed and all those sorts of things. So it doesn't change anything.
And back to Telecity, were there any moments where moments of crises, perhaps, where there was a disagreement between the management team, or when the revenue dropped and you needed to?
Yeah, the funny thing was that the revenue was very consistently, because it was highly recurring. People never used to leave. Once they were in there. The great thing about data centers is once you're connected with hundreds of people,
they're not going to disconnect.
Yeah, exactly. You can't, even if the company goes bankrupt, the thing just sits there and someone else owns it and pays you. So there wasn't really much there. I guess subsequent to that, a few of my businesses, there's been some challenges. I've got a podcast business actually, Audio Boom, which when recently we've had the advertising slump post the pandemic, and that's a real challenge, right? But again, you've got to have people that you trust in charge of these companies. You've got to say, where can we be more efficient? How do we cut costs without kind of killing the business? That sort of thing. And just having good people in charge. All companies are going to go through challenging times. All companies are going to have ups and downs, but having people that know how to react and how to absorb panic, I think is very helpful. Once you know that you're going to have ups and downs, it's a bit like the nose knocking on the doors of the broom salesman, right? It's it's going to happen. It's unreasonable to assume that life is ever only going to do that.
Of course, yeah.
So when you embrace it, you say, okay, this is one of those times. I remember there was an advert once, one of these typical adverts that the advert you remember, but you can't remember what it was advertising, right? So it was a really good advert, kind of, but and it was a hospital room and a patient lying in a bed, and then there was the heart monitor, and it was going ba-dump, 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 like that, and the advert was like, if you're not experiencing the ups and downs of life, you're dead.
Whoa.
Right? And you imagine like a straight line is like really,
Yeah.
and I think, when you kind of, there's a lot of people that are very wealthy that are unhappy because they don't experience the challenges, and there's a lot of people that don't have much that are happy because they occasionally they get a little bit of a bump and they really appreciate it. And I think that's a super important thing, is having the challenges of life makes you appreciate the good times. But if you're just permanently at that good time level, it doesn't work.
Was it different managing a public business than a private one? Since the IPO, now you have.
Well, I've got a couple of listed companies that I'm chairman of, and when you look at the listed environment, I'm not a great fan of listed companies, I must admit, because you're too short-termist. everyone's very worried about what the share price is doing, right? And sometimes, if you deliver, if your performance is 10, right, and you've told the market 9, your share price goes up. If your performance is 10 and you told the market 11, your share price goes down. Now, the performance is exactly the same, and yet the value perceived is all about setting expectations and things like this, and it's very short term. So, people don't like to hold, the reason they're into listed stocks is because of the liquidity of a listed stock. People hold private stocks for much longer periods of time, and you can make decisions in a private environment, which in the short term might be seen as negative, but actually are the right thing for the long-term future of the business. Whereas in public companies, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to say, I'm going to make this investment, take out all the profit of this business, put it all into this for now, or I'm going to cut this part of the business because it's not for the future. And the share price crashes, and then people say you failed. But actually, what you're trying to do here is a long-term business decision. So I'm not a great fan, but look, there's a couple of great companies out there that are listed. So, but I think AIM is a challenging market. AIM doesn't have generally the liquidity and the functionality of the main markets. So small businesses on AIM that should never really have IPO'd in the first place always are going to struggle with their share price reflecting the true value of the company.
And for Audioboom, so I think it's the 4th largest podcast streaming platform.
That's right.
Competing with Spotify, with Apple Music.
Exactly. Great little business, UK business. Sits underneath. So if you're listening to a podcast on Spotify or Apple, underneath there is the platform, is Audioboom sitting there. And typically what Apple will do is if you subscribe to Apple Podcasts, there's some podcasts you can't get if you're a Spotify listener and vice versa. Whereas this one, if you're an Audioboom client, then essentially you can listen on any platform. But it's a good little business, yeah. So I've got other data center companies that I chair. I've got a business that's high-speed broadband via satellite to remote parts of the world. Mainly all in tech, I guess. Got a few restaurants now as well.
Restaurants in London?
Yep. So I'm a large minority shareholder in a business called Sixes Cricket. So they have cricket nets inside the restaurants. Nice. So there's one in Great Portland Street, there's one in Fulham. They've got about 11 or 13 of them now, actually. And then there's another one where I'm the chairman of a business called Park Row, which is in Brewer Street, and it's a Batman-themed restaurant. Wow. And again, great guy. My CEO there, James, he was the CEO of the Fat Duck in Bray, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and he got fed up working with Heston Blumenthal and said, I want to try and do something else. I said, what do you want to do? He said, well, I've always fancied doing something. I'm crazy about Batman and DC Comics. So went out to LA, met with Warner Brothers, gave them a pitch, and they said, you can have free reign in hospitality to do whatever you like with all of our brands, which includes Harry Potter, Sex and the City, Friends, Game of Thrones. So we opened this one as kind of a Batman-themed restaurant. And we're looking now to open one in Vegas, which is a Drive to Survive themed restaurant with Netflix. And we'll be opening up on the roof of the big screens in Piccadilly Circus. That roof's never been used, so we're opening that one as an Alice in Wonderland theme.
So all different concepts, all
in the same group, but all different concepts. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's the same thing, it's like, it's all people.
The question is, all these restaurants, are their chips better than ours, made by Homegrown Club?
Well, they're certainly warmer. These are cold now. They've been sitting there a while. But these are good chips. These are good chips, I must admit. Yeah, definitely good chips.
So all of these businesses are from Tobin Ventures, right?
Yeah. So I just built an investment vehicle to kind of play with different assets. So most of the investments I have, I'm involved in some way or another, either as chairman or whatever. There's a few that I invest in that I'm not involved in, but generally I like the people. I start with people always, right? So where I know I know my tech world and everything else. But I didn't know the first thing about running restaurants. But I like people. So getting somebody that you have confidence in, that you can back, then I'll invest in a Tiddlywinks company. I don't care. Right? So if you've got great people, yeah, the people are the key.
But also, I guess, if when the team is formed, even if their business idea doesn't work out, they understand it in the process, and they sometimes switch. They understand the market, and they.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to have people that are dynamic and flexible, right? And also that are truthful. Honesty is really important, right? I mean, I say to them when I'm as chairman, I don't want a board meeting where there's a good or bad surprise, right? Everything's got to be like, if you see something coming, let me know early. You know, you've got resources on the board, we can pull together, we can deal with things. But you know, trying to bury your head in the sand with tough news is not a good look. So.
Sure. And now a lot from your career is involved in sales.
Yeah.
You know, selling your vision to talent, whether it's selling your vision to an investor. What sales advice, perhaps, would you give to people out there? You know, how to be good at sales, how to get your point across, get your vision.
Well, I think the story about the broom salesman, I think, is a really important one, right? So first of all, you're always selling. It doesn't matter what your job title is. You're always selling yourself, apart from anything else, right? So, be horrible word, authentic, but
be genuine.
Be genuine,
be yourself,
right? Yeah, and say like you've got to have a certain amount of confidence that everyone can be different. Everyone can, you're for sure not going to like everybody in life. And for sure, not everyone's going to like you in life. And that's a kind of a crazy thing to assume, that everyone must like you. But nevertheless, you can still be yourself. You can still be kind of like, all right, well, I know what I'm about. I know, I'm comfortable in my skin, if that makes sense, right? And there's going to be people that like me and people that don't, and that's all good, and good luck to them and that sort of thing. So I think that's your first part of selling. It's that comfortable in your own skin, because if you think about whatever you sell in life, right, and it's about building conversations, and I like to think of it as building a VPN of trust between you and whoever's in front of you, right? And once you've built the VPN of trust, in all this noise and everything else going through, you can put things through there.
Like an API connection.
Yeah, exactly. And you can put things through that they'll just take because they trust you. Right? Until, of course, you give them some rubbish and then they go, well, I'm not going to trust you again, and that VPN's broken forever, very often, right? So if you want to build, whatever you're selling, whether it's yourself or a product or chips, the VPN of trust, right? And then you can push things down. And as long as you're honest about what you're pushing down and you believe is good for the other side, that VPN just gets wider and wider. So that's kind of the way of thinking about life in general. Just build VPNs of trust with people.
Have there been moments where trust has been broken?
Yeah. I mean, like, again, I don't hold grudges with people. There was one guy that I brought in for a business, and I've worked with him for years before. And instead of telling me that he was finding it difficult, he just left one day and put us in a difficult position to get a new one. And it was annoying, right? And the fact that I felt that he could have told me, right? But he didn't want to. I guess he didn't want to admit that he was more challenged by it or anything else. But again, I don't hold a grudge about it. But it's just frustrating that people can't be a little bit more kind of open. And I guess that was clearly my failings of encouraging him to be open enough. So I look at it as kind of reflective. What can I do better to engage with someone more, for them to be more open?
But I guess it does take a certain personality to be able to admit your mistakes and to be able to be vulnerable and.
I think I personally, I like vulnerability in people, because no one's going to be perfect, right? No one's going to be kind of exceptional at everything, emotionally, physically. So you've got to assume that someone's going to have challenges sometimes, or someone's going to have vulnerabilities. And for me, that's just a recognition of humanity. So I don't mind that.
But with your role, because you're chairman of many companies, so the role of a chairman involves, you help them with strategy, you help them, because you don't get into the operational aspect.
No. So if I have to be involved in a business, I've got the wrong CEO.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And a lot of what I do as a chairman is to build a bridge between leadership of the company and stakeholders of the company, right? So very often, private equities in particular, they'll have a view and they'll use words about a business and about their outcomes and their objectives. And management will use words, but sometimes the words are very different, but actually it's the same. They all want to get to the same end. Everyone wants to make lots of value and create, but they're saying, and so I kind of think of myself, if you remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but kind of a Babel fish, right? So I'm the kind of Babel fish that you put in your ear, so I can translate the different languages that these two companies are saying to individuals or whatever, and make it aligned. So I make sure that your leadership team is empowered, but also have space, right? So I don't want them. It's quite a lonely world to be a CEO sometimes, and you kind of wonder, what on earth? What do I turn? Everything seems to be too much, and so giving them space, allowing them to fail, allowing them to sort of have a journey that says that you're not going to get beaten up by your shareholders every 5 minutes, and so I take a lot of that flack. I take a lot of the kind of like short-term kind of what's going on here? Why are they doing this? And like, calm down, I'll talk with. So I tend to meet with my CEOs 2 or 3 times during interim periods of the board meeting. As I said before, is a simple. It should be a very straightforward process. All of the hard work should be done in between the board meetings. You should have a relationship with your CEO that he goes like, I'm struggling with this. Okay, let's sit down. Let's try and work it out. And that's the way that businesses run smoothly. It's a bit like the swan, right? Everything glides perfectly, and the legs are doing this under. But in order for the board meetings to run well, you've got to have these pre-board meeting kind of action points to get things on track.
And you have to intensively.
You gotta move your feet. You gotta move your feet. Yeah.
But if if the visions misalign sometimes, between the board of investors and the CEO, how do you, one CEO says we need to focus on the UK market 100%, and the investors are, no, look, like France, it's a must.
Well, I mean, this is the interesting thing, right? Is like, why would you buy a dog and then bark yourself? Right? So if you're going to have a CEO, have a CEO. Okay?
Yeah. Right?
And so, if you've got a guy that really understands his business and understands the market, why are you trying to tell him what to do? So I would always go with the CEO rather than private equity is a great business. I love private equity. I work with all different, but they're generalists, right? And they've come along and they've seen opportunity in a business. They've invested in it, right? And then you get quality people to run it, and don't try and tell them what to do, right?
But I've heard that in startups, you need to fire fast, though. If you get someone and you understand that actually that was a mistake, you need to be able to quickly act on it, because
in particular in startups, generally you don't have much time to work within a startup. You're burning cash. You're moving fast. You tend to have innovative solutions. So you don't have the luxury of allowing people to kind of evolve into a role. But again, I'd much rather have someone who's got the right attitude and then say to him, well, maybe CEO isn't the right role for you, but I think we can probably use you over here. And rather than firing at that point, shifting people around and having core teams, right? That, unless you've got obviously a founder's a founder. Most of the companies where I'm working with a founder in a business, he's rarely the CEO. And certainly not at the beginning, right? I've got a business in Bristol and the founder actually now is CEO, but he wasn't CEO for the first several years of the journey. Because he was still evolving. He was a young guy, came out of Bristol University, fantastic product, fantastic guy. And even in his own words, right, he wasn't ready to take all of the responsibility of running the show. So he wanted to just focus on the development side of things. And so we gave him training, put him through management programs and everything else until such point that he felt he was ready to make that transition into leadership. And so very often there's quality, but you just need to find the right space. And I'd rather not just fire someone because it hasn't worked, but I certainly wouldn't move them quickly.
It's like with Jim Shark and Ben Francis. So he was a CEO until a certain point, but then he realized, I guess, that he wanted to try a different role. So he shifted, chief product, chief of marketing to also understand the small details.
But it's a bit like an apprenticeship, right? So in your apprenticeship, I remember I did 4 months in quality assurance. I did 4 months in sales. I did 4 months in the panel beating. So working on punching big chunks of metal out of systems, and then working on the shop floor and really mundane kind of factory work. But at the end of it all, you understand how the business ties together in all the different elements. And when finance moan because this hasn't been put on a PO or something, and you understand why they're moaning, not just why can't you just do it? So you learn how a business evolves and gets together. And I think we miss that. We don't put enough value on apprenticeships, I think, certainly in this country. So you end up pushing people through university that aren't necessarily as academically minded, and they come out with a degree in underwater basket weaving or something, and wonder why there's no job for it, And you go, whereas you could have put them through a kind of an apprenticeship where they could use skills and hands and really come out as a really valuable member of society, right? So,
which trains productivity, I guess, hard work and...
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I'm a great... in Germany, they value apprenticeships. We see apprenticeships as an alternative to higher education. In Germany, they see an apprenticeship as an alternative higher education. So they give the status of an apprenticeship the same as someone going to university. And one is more vocational, one is more academic. Whereas we still see it as, you couldn't go to university, therefore you did an apprenticeship. And it's a bit of a shame to focus on that.
So with Tobin Ventures, are there any success stories, or an investment?
It's all a success story. Life is a success story. If we're sitting here and chatting and having chips, life is a success, right? So
absolutely.
I mean, look, I've had businesses that haven't worked as well, and sometimes it's just timing. Sometimes it's you need more capital than capital is available, and investments are always a choice, right? There's no bottomless pit. So you're presented with, do I put more money into this in the hope of getting something out eventually, or do I cut losses and put the money here? And I like to sort of blend my life with some short-term income, long-term income, a little bit of everything. But most of all, I like to enjoy what I do, right? And so if it's not good people and it's not fun, then don't do it. Life's too short.
But which when a person comes to you seeking for an investment or for you to become a chairman, so obviously intertwined often, but what kind of questions do you ask? So to understand that it's going to be fun, to understand that it's going to be a lot of it is intuition, of course, but still.
Yeah, it's like, what football team do you support? Yeah,
Chelsea.
I don't want any Spurs supporters. I'm not going to work with a Spurs supporter.
In Pitch&Chips, we have a very creative team. We want to surround ourselves with the most talented people, most creative. But Spurs, no, even if you're
yeah, we draw the line there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think finding people that, I say, start a conversation with what they can do and what could be done, rather than the problem with that is, right? So that's my, that'll end something very quickly if I hear those words. But so I think, just looking for people that have an attitude, and it may well be that you invest in something and it doesn't work, but I'll go, fine, but I think we should do something else. Because people are everything, right? So getting good people and having believing you can enjoy the journey as well, right? I mean, you've got to feel that everyone's taking some pleasure out of it, even if it doesn't succeed in the end, because it's taking up your life, right? Every minute that you're doing something is a minute you'll never ever have again in your life. So why would you be unhappy if you could possibly avoid it?
For sure. And thinking of the people, you do some incredible charity work. Also, different charity work, either sleeping on the streets or running 40 marathons in 40 days.
Yeah.
What was the toughest? Was it the marathons or was it sleeping on the streets?
Well, actually, it was going to the South Pole. I'd say was the most difficult. Yeah, minus 65 degrees, dragging 150 kilos behind you for 3 weeks.
No vodka? Or
it's
a must.
Well, funny enough, I actually took a bottle of whiskey with me, and the first day I thought I was going to have a little tipple every. No, there's no way. You're so exhausted. You're so. You need to be so alert. I mean, at night, is the sun used to go around you basically like that. It was daytime all the time. The only way you could tell, you're dragging your sledge across a kind of an ice plateau. Nothing grows, nothing exists, and you're 15 hours just doing this, right? And the only thing you could tell about the time was that this tiny little shadow just went around you like that, and that was all you had as a reference point, right? And it was brutal. I mean, the amount of frostbite, I couldn't feel my fingers for about a year after I came back.
I saw the picture on your audiobook, and it's the frost. And
hypothermia. And what people don't realize about the Antarctica is it's the vast bulk of it is about 3,500 meters. So it's really high. It's like being in the Alps skiing, although you're not going downhill and you're dragging all this gear with you. So altitude sickness is a big issue as well. And I suffered the first couple of days really badly with altitude sickness. And then slowly you get used to that. But at night you're trying to sleep and you're just shivering permanently. You can't rest, right? And somehow, you end up surviving. But survival is an important thing, right? So say when you're sleeping in the streets, I kind of know about homelessness, but I don't really know about homelessness. And again, that survival is because you know that there's a finite end, and your body, you can put your body through tremendous challenge, as long as your mind knows that there's an end point, right? But when you start to compromise with your clarity of your mind, then your body goes downhill very quickly. So keep the clarity of the mind going, and then everything else is easy.
That leads me onto my final question, because it is about the state of the mind.
Yep.
Now, why do you do what you do? What motivates you at the end of the day to keep your body going, to keep doing everything that you're doing, investing in startups?
Well, I mean, enjoying the good things of life, nice chips. We still need income. We still need to provide for people around us, and dependents are, we all have dependents of some sorts. And so I like to continue to create wealth and create opportunity. But then even if I didn't need to do that, when someone comes with a great idea, I want to make their world a success as well, right? I want them to experience, because if you think about it, it's all investment, right? If you think about my grandchildren, the world that they live in, right? I want them to have, boy or girl, I want them to have a nice car, and I don't want someone to come along and key the car and be jealous of it. So if you're creating an environment where people are successful and people have motivation and inspiration, then that's a legacy that's driving down to your kids and your grandkids and everything else, and just makes the world a better world for them to live in. Right? So and also there's a lot of guilt in my life, right? About how lucky I've been. And why should I have all the luck? Just because I've gone on a certain journey and happened to be in X, Y, Z point at any given time, and I've been successful. Well, I'd like to give some of that luck back, and it absolves me of my guilt.
Do you feel like you have a bit of imposter syndrome, where you think that?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Very much so. Left school at 16. I mean, who am I, right? And there's super bright people coming out of uni with all these, so many skills and knowledge and everything. Don't get a break.
Yeah, but you've always shown so much resilience, so much hard work, and you've acted on, you maximize your luck, so.
Yeah, but it's still very much imposter syndrome. So I just, I feel that there's people out there that deserve more fortune than I've had. And giving back is a little bit of absolving myself of that guilt.
Giving back and also enjoying the journey.
Oh, for sure.
Most talented people.
If you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. That's the message with everything.
Oh. Yeah. I've incredibly enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for coming. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.